And joining me live to discuss this further is John Wright, the Executive Vice President of Maru Public Opinion. John, always a pleasure. How are you?
I'm great to be with you, George. Thanks so much.
Well, let's start here. They say the three metrics of a healthy economy are job creation, growth, and manageable inflation. That last one, I mean, we're at a 40-year nadir, right? Not very manageable. It's leading to what's called stagflation, right? Housing and real estate, these are no longer, safe places, oasis either, what they used to be.
Yeah, that's true. And for someone like me who's actually lived through a number of those things and not like a lot of the young people who are just experiencing it for the first time. I mean, I recall when back in the 1990s when it was very, very severe. We're not at that stage at the moment, but we're getting close to it. What is interesting is that you see the wave of cutbacks that people have made in their lives, beginning with about half the public in June, then moving up to about 2/3 in August. And now with this poll, we're finding 75%, roughly in that range, who have cut back. And about 1/3 of the public is really, really feeling the heat right now.
And you're talking in the 90s. Let's go back to the 70s and something that's defined as Wolverine inflation, where it's millennial driven now, right? The last time we saw this was back in the 70s when 75 million boomers were replaced by replaced the 44 million or so silent generation or the greatest generation. Now we're seeing that with millennials replacing boomers. What's happened before always happens again.
I suppose it does, but I mean, the difference now is that we've gone through not only COVID, but the government of Canada itself has printed up almost $700 billion of extra money that's in the system. And so that inflation is not coming down the way in which some of the other countries are dealing with. Secondly, with the sharp rise in interest rates, I can remember back in those 70s when my parents had credit cards, it was cheaper to put it on a credit card and to buy things than it was to take a loan. It's not the case now. We've got surprisingly full employment pretty much across this country where jobs are going begging. But the reality is that sharp interest rate rise has caught so many young people off guard that they're the ones who are hurting the most. And you can see in these numbers that it's pushing, about 1/3 of the public to really have to figure out what to do with it. But more importantly, about 1 in 5 are really at the brink right now in terms of not being able to pay anything because they're loading up on those credit cards as well as dealing with inflation.
Yeah, those 1 in 5 are spending half of their income on rent or mortgage right now too, right? I mean, it all comes down to consumer confidence too, doesn't it, John? I mean, this high interest rate environment is going to be with us for a while. The Bank of Canada, they admit they should have maybe stepped in earlier.
Yeah, they should have. And the reality is that they started ramping it up a little bit at a time, it wouldn't have caught so many people off guard. But by keeping it the way they did, a lot more people bought those houses. And this is what you can see, where those people who bought houses at the peak, in fact, now are experiencing on variable mortgage rates, these high interest rates plus inflation, which are squeezing them, and they're caught in the middle like a vice. So, if you go to your local bank and speak to the bank manager and you say, well, what's going on out there? They're going to say, look, we're seeing a lot of people who are in trouble with the loans, but what they're now doing is loading up on those credit cards. You're finding a little bit higher income people who are cashing out on some of those investments to try and keep the spread. George, to put it in perspective, if about in November, you'd bought a house at the rates that you had. That's a year ago. And you were paying $2,000 a month for rent. On the mortgage. If it's a variable mortgage, the same circumstance today, $5,000. Like it's gone up that much, $3,000 in that short period of time. Yeah. And that's what's squeezing people as well as inflation.
Yep. And all this while the wages are flat, right? I mean, that's not going anywhere. For most people.
It isn't, but you know what? I mean, we ask people as well how long they could ride the recession out if we have one that's full bore. And I don't see any evidence right now. You don't see, in downtown Toronto, you're not seeing great big for sale signs up on windows except for Black Friday. It's not like it usually is for a recession. But you know what? We asked people whether they would survive the recession. And right now you have about 3 in 10 who are comfortably going to skate through it. About another 3 in 10 who would last probably about 6 months, but the rest of them are going to fade out very, very quickly within about a month or so. So we're teetering on that. Dealing with a recession and inflation and interest rates like this is a little bit like treading water in shark-infested waters. I mean, there's some people who are going to go a little bit quicker than others. And it's terrible to say that, especially heading into Christmas time. Yeah. But that's the reality that this kind of squeeze puts on people.
John Wright, Executive VP at Maru Public Opinion. thanks for all that. Very necessary adult conversation we're having today.
Thanks so much, George. Great to be with you.
Okay.